Chosen one. There are moments when your life feels like it's burning down to ashes, not because you did wrong, but because heaven was refining you. You've been through flames that should have consumed you, yet somehow you walked out untouched. And today you'll understand why. There was once a man named Louis Zamperini, a soldier captured during World War II. He was beaten, starved, and humiliated for years. Everyone thought he'd never make it out alive. But when he finally returned home, the world was stunned. Not only did he survive, he forgave his captors. His story wasn't about endurance, it was about divine protection. Just like Louis, you weren't destroyed, you were delivered. They watched as your world fell apart and thought, this will end them. They whispered that you'd never recover. They waited for your downfall like vultures circling a battlefield. But what they didn't see was the light that surrounded you, the unseen hands that covered you while the fire raged. While they plotted your destruction, heaven planned your purification. The same flames they meant for harm became the very force that burned away your weakness. Now you stand, not fragile, not fearful, but fierce and unshaken. The fire they sent didn't scar you, it sanctified you. Your enemies thought you'd panic in the heat, that you'd collapse when pressure mounted. But they never realized the fire within you was greater than the fire around you. That inner flame, your faith, your resilience, your divine calling, it refused to die. While they mocked your pain, heaven was anointing your endurance. Every sleepless night, every silent tear became a seed for your next season of power. Now they're shocked to see you rise, calm, composed, glowing with peace. You didn't just survive, you transformed. You didn't walk out of the fire because you escaped it, you walked out because you mastered it. They tried to cover your name with lies, shade your light with rumors, and drown your truth with noise. They thought that if they threw enough dirt, no one would see the gold beneath it. But God, oh, He specializes in divine exposure. Every hidden attack became a setup for revelation. The smoke they created only made your shine more visible against the chaos. Now your glow intimidates them. Your peace disturbs their guilt. Because deep down they know, what should have destroyed you only displayed you. They see now, you weren't buried. You were planted. You didn't see them, but they were there. When you cried yourself to sleep, when you were about to give up, when every door slammed shut, angels were guiding your every step. They whispered strength when your voice trembled. They stood guard when betrayal walked in. And when the flames rose higher, they carried you through without letting a single piece of you burn. That's why you don't look like what you've been through. That's why people can't explain your peace. Because it's not from this world. You were covered, carried, and crowned, even in chaos. The world expects scars to show pain, but yours tell a story of power. Every wound healed clean, every bruise faded, every heartbreak turned to wisdom. You didn't just walk out of the fire. You became the testimony that fire can't destroy destiny. The same ones who laughed are now learning from you. The same ones who doubted now whisper, how did they survive that? And the answer is simple. You weren't walking alone. The fire didn't end you. It revealed you. They thought the fire would be your finish line. They clapped when they saw your tears. They rejoiced when they heard of your struggles. And they smiled when they thought your downfall was certain. To them, your silence looked like surrender, but heaven was just preparing your resurrection. While they were laughing, God was lifting. While they were gossiping, angels were guarding. They didn't realize that the very season they mocked would become the soil of your miracle. Now they're stunned, because the same person they pitied is standing taller than ever. You are living proof that He who starts the fire also controls the outcome. The celebration they had was premature because your comeback is still unfolding. And chosen one, your rise will not be quiet. Heaven will make sure it's seen. They thought turning up the pressure would make you quit. They tried to overload you with trials, hoping you'd finally bend. But like gold in a furnace, you didn't melt, you purified. That's the thing about divine endurance. It doesn't crumble, it crystallizes. You came out clearer, sharper, stronger. Every trial became a training ground. Every loss became a lesson. And now, when they look at you, they can't find the weakness they once exploited. Because God didn't remove the fire. He changed your composition in it. You're not fragile anymore. You're forged. And when heaven forges a chosen one, no power in hell can unmake them. They used their words like weapons, hoping to scorch your name. They said you'd fail, that you'd fade, that you'd never bounce back. But there's a voice that always rises above slander, the voice of evidence. God let your victory speak. Your peace became your proof. Your blessings became your defense. And when heaven decides to vindicate a chosen one, no tongue can silence it. Now they don't talk as much, do they? Because the same mouths that cursed you are busy explaining how you're still shining. You see, chosen one, when you walk with divine fire, human flames lose their heat. They thought destroying you would bring them peace. But every scheme against you became a curse that turned back on them. That's spiritual law. What you send out returns multiplied. Now, the very people who wished you harm are restless, haunted by regret. They can't understand why their plans keep failing, why doors keep closing, why everything they touch loses its glow. Because heaven defends its own, and you are marked by divine ownership. When they fought you, they weren't fighting flesh and blood, they were fighting favor. And favor never loses. The price they paid for touching a chosen one is far greater than they imagined. Meanwhile, you walk forward, untouched, unbothered, unstoppable. You thought you were being trapped in fire, but you were actually being led through it. Every closed door, every betrayal, every night you begged for relief, was part of the map. The fire wasn't your prison, it was your passage. Because God doesn't just rescue chosen ones, He reroutes them. And sometimes, the only way to reach your destiny is through what was meant to destroy you. Now you see it. The fire was never punishment. It was placement. It burned away distractions, revealed your true circle, and cleared your path to purpose. You didn't lose your way. You found it. The flames that tried to block your destiny became the light that showed you where to walk next. When the fire ended, they expected to see the same version of you, wounded, weary, worn down. But what stepped out was someone different, someone radiant, someone wise, someone reborn. That's what divine transformation does. It hides you in the storm and unveils you in glory. You no longer move the way you used to. You no longer tolerate what once drained you. The fire refined not just your path, but your identity. Now, when they look at you, they're confused. They can't comprehend how someone who lost everything now carries unshakable peace. But you know why, because your scars were rewritten as strength. You didn't just walk out of the fire. You evolved through it. Heaven didn't restore the old you. It revealed the destined you. They thought your faith was fragile, something you only carried when life was easy. But when everything collapsed, you didn't curse God, you clung tighter. They expected you to question your purpose, but you kept moving, even with tears in your eyes. And that endurance terrified them, because nothing is more dangerous to darkness than a soul that refuses to break. When the enemy realized pain couldn't control you, he panicked. Because your worship became your weapon, your patience became your power, and your silence became your shield. They thought they were watching your ending, but heaven was writing your testimony. You became the proof that divine strength doesn't shout, it stands. There were nights you cried until your body trembled, nights where prayer felt like breathing underwater. And yet, those tears weren't wasted, they were spiritual currency. Each one was collected, counted, and converted into protection. That's why now, when attacks come, they bounce right off you. You've been conditioned by pain, covered by purpose, and clothed in light. You used to fear what was coming next. Now, you walk through storms smiling. Because what hurt you before can't touch you anymore. You've already been through the worst, and survived it with grace. You don't just wear peace, you embody it. When the heat turned up, the masks started melting. People who claimed loyalty disappeared. Those who swore they loved you went silent. And at first, it broke your heart. But that exposure was mercy, not misfortune. God wasn't punishing you. He was protecting you from the wrong attachments. Because where you're going, not everyone can follow. The fire revealed who was real and who was merely convenient. Now you move lighter, wiser, freer. The ones who walked away were never meant to see your harvest. They were only there for the planting season. Let them go. Their exit was part of your elevation. Every moment you thought you were alone, heaven was teaching you how to see in the dark. Every time you felt abandoned, you were being equipped with discernment. The fire wasn't random, it was a classroom. The angels weren't just pulling you out, they were showing you how to walk through next time without fear. That's why your faith feels sharper now. That's why your peace is unexplainable. They taught you how to fight without losing compassion. How to forgive without letting people back into access they don't deserve. You didn't just survive divine training, you graduated with divine authority. Now you don't fear the fire. You command it. There's divine irony in your story. The very situations that nearly broke you are now blessing you. The same workplace that drained you taught you how to lead. The heartbreak that shattered you, it made room for real love. The rejection that humiliated you, it redirected you to destiny. That's how God operates. He turns every curse into a curriculum. And what once felt like loss was actually rearrangement. Now, when you look back, you see it clearly. The fire wasn't chaos, it was choreography. Every pain had a purpose. Every detour was divine. You didn't lose anything that heaven intended for you to keep. They expected you to stay broken, to limp through life, to keep reliving your pain. They thought your healing would take years, maybe forever, but heaven accelerated your recovery. Your glow returned too quickly for their comfort. Your peace arrived too powerfully for their logic. They can't explain how you moved from ashes to authority in such a short time. What they call luck was divine timing. What they call mystery was angelic intervention. You healed not because time passed, but because grace touched you. Now your very existence is a reminder that God still redeems fast. You're walking proof that divine restoration doesn't need permission, it just needs faith. There's a version of you that even you hadn't met until everything fell apart. That inner warrior, that calm storm, that unbreakable peace, it emerged only when the flames surrounded you. The old you would have begged for mercy. The new you walks with mastery. You've learned to find peace in pressure, clarity in chaos, purpose in pain. Now people don't recognize you, and that's exactly how God intended it. You outgrew the environment that tried to contain you. You're no longer defined by who you were, you're identified by who you became. The fire didn't change your name, it revealed your nature, and your nature was always divine resilience. When the flames rose, you mourned what burned away, the people, the plans, the possessions. But chosen one, the truth is harsh and holy. Not everything that was left was stolen. Some things were sifted. Heaven removed what couldn't carry you forward. Because you prayed for peace, and sometimes peace requires pruning. Now you realize, what you called loss was actually liberation. Those relationships would have anchored you to pain. Those old dreams would have kept you small. Those environments would have dimmed your anointing. You didn't lose what was yours. You lost what was limiting you. They don't mock you anymore. They don't whisper your name like they used to, because something in their spirit remembers what they did and what heaven did because of it. The conviction they carry isn't your revenge, it's their revelation. They finally understand that you weren't just another person. You were chosen, and they mishandled you. Now, instead of plotting against you, they watch from a distance, wondering how you're still shining. And deep down, they know, their words tried to curse you, but heaven turned those curses into wind that lifted you higher. Silence is their surrender. Peace is your proof. You thought you were just surviving a hard season, but heaven was unlocking your next level. The pain was an initiation. The fire was a summons. Now you speak with wisdom you didn't study. You comfort others with empathy you earned in tears. You discern energy before words are spoken. That's what happens when chosen ones walk through the flame. They emerge with spiritual authority. You're not just healed, you're anointed. Your story became a weapon for deliverance. What once felt like punishment was preparation. You weren't being broken, you were being branded by destiny. You carry a fire now that doesn't burn, it illuminates. You thought the fire was meant to hide you, but it became your stage. The very people who ignored you before now have to witness your rise. The same ones who dismissed you now quote your strength. That's divine reversal. When God decides it's your time, even your enemies become your audience. You didn't need revenge. You needed revelation, and heaven delivered it. Now your story carries power, your voice carries weight, and your name carries light. You were never meant to blend in. The fire didn't destroy your platform, it built it. Heaven used the flames to announce your arrival. When your light began to shine, they grew uneasy. Your peace bothered their chaos, your confidence exposed their insecurity. So they tried to shrink you with gossip, manipulation, subtle insults masked as advice. But chosen one, you cannot be hidden when heaven handcrafted your glow. They forgot your light wasn't man-made, it was God-breathed. Every attempt to dim you only made you burn brighter. Now the same ones who said you were too much quietly study how you stayed unbothered. They see the glow and wonder how you kept it alive in the smoke. The answer? You never relied on their approval to shine, only on divine assignment. When the noise of life burned away, all that remained was silence. At first, it felt lonely, but in that silence you began to hear. Not the opinions of others, not the fears of your mind, but the whisper of God that says, "This is the way. Walk in it." You stopped chasing validation and started following vibration, divine frequency. Now you move with precision. You sense danger before it forms. You discern hearts before they speak. The fire didn't just cleanse your environment, it cleared your frequency. You don't pray the same anymore, you listen differently. And that's why your steps are ordered, even when the path isn't visible. They threw your failures in your face, hoping to brand you with regret. They wanted your past to be your prison, but grace rewrote the story. Now every mistake you made has meaning. Your setbacks became sermons. Your scars became symbols of survival. They wanted to remind you of where you fell. God reminds you of where you rose. And here's the twist. What embarrassed you then now empowers others. Because transparency is the trademark of the chosen. You're not afraid to tell the truth, because your truth glorifies victory. Your past no longer haunts you, it honors you. You didn't understand why everyone walked away. You questioned why doors closed and conversations ended. But chosen one, solitude was never punishment, it was preparation. In the quiet, you learned to depend on presence over people. You found peace in prayer instead of validation in company. That sacred aloneness made you dangerous, because now you don't need the crowd to confirm your calling. When you were isolated, you were actually being incubated. Now your anointing carries depth, your words carry weight, and your silence carries authority. The world sees confidence. Heaven knows its communion. They thought anyone could do what you do, say what you say, carry what you carry. But favor isn't transferable. When you walked away, the energy shifted. The same space they took over turned cold. The same plans they stole fell flat. Because your presence was never ordinary, it was ordained. You carried the grace that kept things alive, and they never knew until it was gone. Now they realize, it wasn't luck, it was light. And no imitation can recreate the glow of the genuine. You are irreplaceable because your assignment is individual. Once you've walked through what should have destroyed you, what's left to fear? You've seen loss, betrayal, confusion, and still you rose. That's why nothing shakes you now. They can't intimidate you with rejection anymore. They can't control you with scarcity. Because you've been through the worst and found out it couldn't kill your purpose. That's divine boldness, not arrogance, awareness. You now understand who walks beside you, and fear bows to that realization. You don't just survive the storm anymore, you command the waves to calm. Before the storms came, you underestimated yourself. You doubted your strength, your voice, your worth. But when the flames rose, something ancient awakened in you, something divine. You discovered that power wasn't something God had to give you. It was something He had already placed inside you long ago. The fire didn't create your strength, it uncovered it. Every trial peeled back another layer of self-doubt until your true essence stood tall, untouchable, unbreakable. Now you walk with quiet authority. Not because you want to prove a point, but because you are the point. The chosen one doesn't need validation. Their survival is proof enough. At first, they thought they won. They smiled when your life looked like it was collapsing. They whispered, "That's what they get," as if your fall was final. But heaven doesn't end stories where enemies expect it to. Now, they're watching the same fire that was meant to destroy you become the altar of your blessing. The same tongues that mocked are silent. The same eyes that pitted are humbled. They didn't just lose the battle, they lost the privilege of access. Because God doesn't just restore His chosen, He repositions them. You didn't come out the same person. You came out with evidence that heaven defends its own. They remember how easily they could shake you before. How quickly you used to react, explain, and defend. But now, you don't chase closure. You carry it. Your silence unsettles them because it speaks louder than confrontation. Your peace exposes their guilt. Your composure mirrors their chaos. And they can't stand the reflection. You've outgrown the battlefield they keep trying to drag you back to. Because when you've met divine fire, petty flames don't faze you. The most powerful sound a chosen one can make is quiet, because heaven fights best in silence. They didn't see the nights you spent crying on your knees. They didn't see the days you showed up broken but faithful. But God saw, and heaven remembered. Now the tables have turned. Opportunities you never chased are finding you. Peace you never begged for flows to you. The same people who ignored your struggle now have to witness your glow. That's not a coincidence. That's divine compensation. When heaven rewards, it doesn't whisper. It announces. Because every hidden pain deserves a visible purpose. You suffered in silence. Now you shine in sight. You once prayed for open doors, and instead you got fire. You thought it was destruction, but it was transition. Heaven knew that comfort would never push you toward calling, so it sent heat to move your feet. Every flame you feared was a doorway disguised as disaster. And once you stopped resisting the process, the path appeared. That's the secret. Chosen ones don't escape fire. They evolve through it. Now, every time you face something hard, your spirit recognizes the pattern. You no longer ask, "Why me?" You whisper, "What's next?" Because you finally understand, every burn becomes a bridge. They tried to rewrite your story with lies. They tried to convince you that you were ordinary, replaceable, unworthy. But you remembered. Even when your faith was faint, your identity spoke louder. Because the chosen can be shaken, but never erased. Now your confidence confuses them. They can't grasp how someone who's been through so much still radiates certainty. It's because your confidence isn't built on ego, it's rooted in eternity. They tried to make you forget. But fire has a funny way of reminding chosen ones who they are. You are not who they said you were. You're who God proved you are. There's a calm in your step now. Not arrogance, awareness. You've seen storms too fierce to describe, yet you stand here breathing peace. That's the quiet strength of the delivered. You don't need to explain your glow or justify your peace. Both are evidence that heaven walked with you. They wonder why you smile so calmly. It's because you know something they don't. The same fire that nearly consumed you now fuels you. And every step you take is sacred, because you walked out of hell and didn't smell like smoke. Chosen one, understand this truth. Not everyone is trusted with trial. God only allows the fire to touch those strong enough to carry revelation through it. Heaven knew you wouldn't curse the heat, you'd convert it. That's why others crumbled under pressure, you quietly endured. That's why storms that broke them built you. The fire was never a punishment, It was proof of trust. When heaven wants to reveal power, it chooses a vessel willing to stand in the flame and still whisper, "I believe." You didn't just survive because you were strong. You survived because heaven believed in you first. Now every scar you bear whispers, "I was trusted with transformation." They expected bitterness to cling to you like smoke. They thought you'd seek revenge, that you'd walk around wounded and resentful. But instead, you came out healed, humble, and peaceful. That peace disturbs them. Because when you forgive without being asked, when you rise without retaliation, you expose the weakness of their spirit. You didn't return their fire, you transcended it. That's what true spiritual elevation looks like. Turning pain into wisdom instead of war. Your calm is your crown. Your compassion is your closure. You didn't escape the flames by fighting them, you outgrew them. And that kind of grace cannot be faked. It's heaven-grown. When everything was burning, you thought you were losing visibility. You thought God had forgotten your name. But chosen one, you weren't being ignored. You were being concealed. Heaven hid you while you healed. You were being molded, not missed. Because exposure too early could have destroyed what was still sacred inside you. Now that you've walked out, you realize the silence was protection. They couldn't find you, couldn't reach you, couldn't ruin you, because heaven covered you in firelight. What they thought was your destruction was actually a divine disguise. The flame didn't hide you from God, it hid you for God. There were moments when walking away made no sense, when forgiving seemed unfair, when surrendering felt like losing. But every time you chose obedience over ego, heaven moved something unseen. That's the mystery of divine timing. Obedience creates ripple effects in the unseen world. You didn't just survive the fire, you shifted atmospheres through it. Doors opened for others because you stayed faithful. Generational patterns broke because you refused to bend. Now peace follows your presence, because everywhere you go, heaven recognizes a soldier who stood in the flames and didn't bow. You changed more than your own life. You changed the spiritual climate around you. People can't provoke you like before. Their opinions don't pierce like they used to. You've mastered emotional neutrality, not because you don't feel, but because you see differently now. You've seen too much to take things personally. You recognize projection for what it is, a sign of their pain, not your flaw. The fire taught you emotional wisdom, the ability to stay still while others shake. That's divine maturity. Now your peace isn't fragile, it's fortified. They can throw shade, but you've become the sun, steady, glowing, untouchable. And that kind of unoffendable strength terrifies small-minded spirit. You used to explain your worth, justify your calling, and defend your decisions. But not anymore. Because when God vindicates you, you don't have to talk. Your results do the talking. You are the evidence that divine favor is real. You are the testimony that faith still works. They don't need your story anymore. They can see your survival. Chosen one, your success is not revenge, it's revelation. Every victory you carry is heaven's way of saying, "See, I told you so." You don't need applause, your existence is the proof. The fire didn't give you validation, it gave you visibility. You don't see the world the same anymore. You notice signs, patterns, energies that others overlook. Your discernment sharpened in the darkness. That's the hidden gift of the fire. It doesn't just build strength, it births sight. You can sense spiritual shifts before they happen. You can feel peace leaving a room before words are spoken. That's not paranoia, that's divine perception. You've become a vessel heaven can trust with messages. Because you've lived revelation, not just read it. The fire didn't just heal your eyes, it gave you spiritual vision. You no longer see life, you see through it. They tried to copy your energy. They mimicked your words, your rhythm, your presence. But they forgot, imitation can't recreate anointing. What you carry isn't a performance, it's permission. Heaven signed off on your essence, and that signature can't be forged. They can study your glow, but they'll never reproduce your grace. because your oil was pressed through personal pain, not borrowed inspiration. Every ounce of it was birthed through nights you thought would end you. And that's why the counterfeit never shines like the chosen, because imitation can only echo, it can't emanate. You were refined by authenticity, they were fueled by envy, and heaven always makes the difference visible. There was a time when your faith depended on outcomes, when answered prayers were your proof that God was with you. But the fire changed that. Now, even when nothing works, your spirit still whispers, "I know He's here." That's not naive, that's evolved. Faith after comfort is belief. Faith after chaos is revelation. You no longer worship for blessings. You worship because you've seen the builder. You don't need constant miracles because you've become one. And now your confidence doesn't shout, it radiates. Chosen one, that's the level of faith that terrifies darkness. The kind that glows even when nothing goes right. You used to crave validation like air. Every compliment fed your worth. Every criticism pierced your soul. But when life stripped away applause, you met the only approval that matters, God's. Now, you no longer chase acknowledgement because divine validation made you whole. You walk differently because your confidence no longer needs an audience. You shine without permission. You love without expectation. You move without fear of misunderstanding. They call it arrogance, but it's actually alignment. Because when heaven confirms your calling, the crowd's opinion becomes irrelevant. The fire freed you from people's opinions so you could finally hear heaven's affirmation. You wondered why you had to suffer so deeply, why your lessons came so hard. But chosen one, pain was heaven's classroom. You were being trained to understand what others only preach. That's why people feel peace when you speak. Your words don't come from theory, they come from testimony. You don't quote healing, you carry it. You don't describe freedom, you embody it. Every tear carved wisdom into your spirit. Every betrayal deepened your empathy. Now your presence brings comfort because it carries credibility. You're not just talking about God's goodness. You became the evidence of it. You started to notice what you once ignored. How certain rooms felt heavy, how certain people drained you, how certain silences screamed truth. The fire rewired your sensitivity. You no longer absorb everything, you discern everything. You recognize energy before intention, vibration before words. That's not paranoia, that's spiritual maturity. Heaven fine-tuned your senses so you could navigate darkness with precision. Now, peace is your compass. Discomfort is your warning. You no longer chase connection, you recognize resonance. And that discernment is divine armor no enemy can bypass. At first, you feared the flames. You thought the heat would consume you, that survival meant escaping. But you stayed, and something happened, you merged with the fire. You became the heat that purifies, the light that exposes lies, the force that transforms everything it touches. Now, you don't run from the storm recognizes you. You've become a walking furnace of faith and focus. You burn through illusion, ego, and limitation. That's why people feel conviction and comfort around you at the same time, because you carry both flame and grace. You're no longer just surviving the fire, you are the fire. When people see you now, they can't explain it. You look peaceful when you should be bitter. You radiate joy where pain once lived. That glow is not cosmetic, it's cosmic. It's the residue of divine rescue. It's the afterglow of angelic presence. You were polished by pressure and kissed by purpose. Every chosen one carries this light, the quiet brilliance of those who've seen darkness and lived to tell the story. You are heaven's walking headline. They came through the fire without a scar. Your glow is not arrogance, it's evidence. Evidence that grace leaves fingerprints on those it saved. Chosen one, hear this clearly. You were never meant to be consumed by the fire, only confirmed by it. Everything you lost, every tear you shed, every night you thought would end you, it was never chaos, it was consecration. Heaven wasn't punishing you, it was proving you. The angels didn't leave you, They were leading you, through smoke, through silence, through surrender. And when you walked out, not even the smell of the fire remained on you. That's why you look untouched, even after walking through hell. Because divine protection doesn't just defend, it erases evidence. Every scar they expected to see became a story instead. Every rumor they whispered about your downfall became a revelation about your endurance. They can't explain your peace. They can't understand your strength. Because they saw the flames, but they never saw the angels. Now you stand on the other side, not weaker, but wiser. Not broken, but born again. You are heaven's proof that resilience is holy, that faith is fireproof, and that purpose always survives purification. So walk with that light, speak with that authority. And remember, the fire didn't change you, it revealed you. You were the miracle the whole time. If this message spoke to your spirit, let heaven know by dropping a word of gratitude in the comments. Like this video, not for algorithms, but as an act of agreement with divine protection. And if you haven't yet joined this family of chosen ones, subscribe. Because here, we don't just watch messages, we walk in them. Heaven carried you through the fire. Now, it's time to shine from the ashes. Because you, chosen one, you walked out without a scar. Amen.